Okay, so I'm going to try a focaccia recipe. I made one last week. Might have been the weekend before. It was fantastic. So I'm going to try that with this idea of pulling some of it out into a starter first. So the actual focaccia recipe, like most bread recipes, calls for 2 teaspoons of dried yeast, 500 grams of bread flour, about 350 millilitres of water, and about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. There can be some other things. Those of you who are familiar with American recipes may be surprised that there is absolutely no sugar in there. There does not need to be sugar in bread. Sometimes there is, but it is not necessary. Certainly not to the ridiculous copious amounts that the Americans do. So for this starter, I'm going to pull out 1/2 teaspoon of that 2 teaspoons of yeast, 150 millilitres of the water, and 125 grams of the flour. We mix that all up into a sloppy paste and let it sit overnight. Then tomorrow we add it in to the rest of those ingredients and make the bread as per usual. We'll see what happens. Okay, so to our 150 millilitres of water, 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. It says sprinkle that on and let it stand for 5 minutes, basically, for it to sort of soak in and dissolve a little bit. Then we can go and mix the flour in. We'll be back. Okay, well, I'm still getting used to this taking video things. I tried to pause my camera on my phone for that 5 minutes for the yeast, and then I thought I started the camera back up again when I added my 150 grams of 125 grams of flour, but in fact what I did was turned the camera off from pause altogether. So I've added the flour. It was still a little bit dry, so I added a little bit more water. It's all nice and sloppy. That's now going to sit overnight. It's 4 o'clock tomorrow morning when I wake up. So about 6 o'clock or so, maybe 7, I will start making the focaccia properly. Probably end up throwing it in the oven by about 9, maybe 9:30, which means I'll have some nice filled focaccia for a brunch at about 10:30 probably. Great. Rightio, so we're covering it up with the tea towel. There we go. We'll come back tomorrow. Okay, so we are ready to go with the rest of the focaccia. First up, the starter, which is looking very nice and puffed up, as I think hopefully you can see. So now the flour, we've got 375 grams of flour to add. Just right. Now to that we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Okay. 200 mils of water. Not too hot though. That's a bit cold. There we go. Just right. And yes, my hands are clean. So into that we still have 1.5 teaspoons of yeast to add. And I have to wait another 5 minutes for that to settle in and melt and be incorporated. Right, well, our 5 minutes are up. Just mix that in. Use a whisk or whatever you like. Okay, so actually I've done this around the wrong way because you're supposed to put the water into the flour, not the flour into the water, but it'll work. It all gets mixed up anyway, so it's not that much of an issue. So we've also got 3 tablespoons of oil, which is, because it's an American recipe book or not an Australian recipe book, that's 3 teaspoons per tablespoon. If it was Australian, it would be 4 teaspoons. Our tablespoons are bigger, so that's 9 teaspoons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And we're going to need a trusty scraper. Just double check my recipe. I don't know this one off by heart yet. So, salt in there, do that, do that, do that. Okay, that will do it. So, we will pop the starter in. And then the flour. Hopefully things will be alright. Oops. Stop my flour. Okay, so just mix that around a bit to get it started, and then I'll put it in the stand mixer for the remainder. Scrape the shaggy bits off. set the mixer up. And put you on hold. Okay, so I'm going to move it around a little bit. The stand wasn't really working for me. One dough hook. This should be interesting with one hand. That was easier than I thought. Okay. Turn that on and away we go. To me, that's looking a little bit dry, so we'll put that on hold. I'll get some more water and just add a little bit at a time. Okay, so a little water. It's the sort of thing you need to do slowly because it's very easy to go from one extreme to the other. A bit hard to see, but the dough is actually sliding around at the moment until it incorporates the water in. We'll just turn it up a bit, it's going to get a bit noisy. They say if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. They really should say if you can't handle the noise, stay out of the kitchen. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's softened up quite nicely with just that one little bit of water in. I might just add another small amount because we've got about 10 minutes of kneading to go, and I prefer to have a softer dough than a harder, firmer one. And generally speaking, as it kneads, the dough will sort of, as it all works together, it tends to get a little bit stiffer than it starts out. So while that's doing its bit, I hope it doesn't walk off the cupboard. I'm going to set my timer. And you don't need to see 10 minutes of this. The mixer walks.
Okay, so you'll notice that the sides of the bowl are clean. That's a good indicator that things are mixed. We'll lift him up, and it is soft but not sticky, as in it doesn't stick to my hand. It's been going for the recommended 10 minutes, so I reckon that's good enough. Right, so big bowl to put it in, oil it up so it doesn't stick. It's going to sit in here in a warm place for about an hour and a half to 2 hours until it doubles in size. Always put some oil on whatever lid or whatever you're putting on top, because depending on what happens, it's not impossible for your bread to actually surprise you with how far it rises. So we'll scrape off the last of our dough off here. Actually, that's looking very good. Scrape it out into bowl. Sticky. I usually wear gloves. I forgot this morning. I've only just woken up. My hands are clean. And a bit of oil on them just to turn the dough over so it's all covered in oil. There we go. Small amount of dough on the bottom. And we'll see how well it rises in that 2 hours. Rightio, so proving time's over. And it was stuck to the lid, as I said it might. As you can see, it has come up very, very nicely. So now I've got to divide the dough in two and then perform what's called chafing, which is just basically forming it into two nice rounds. Just throw a little bit of flour down. Ooh, this is a bit wet. May not have been a good experiment after all. It's looking more like a ciabatta than a focaccia. Divide the dough in two. And chafing, as I said, is just a matter of making it round.
Okay, well that was pretty boring. It's just a matter of rounding and drawing the surface firm so that it becomes smooth and round. Read up on it, it's called chafing. Now that's got to rest for 10 minutes. Righto, so now we are going to shape and fill. This is filled focaccia, doing it in 2 pieces. Going to have, I've got corn silver side and some salami and some cheese, bit of tomato paste, basically any meat from the delicatessen that you like, as long as it's cooked. I wouldn't be putting raw bacon in there, maybe, but not other sorts of meat raw. It may not cook inside the bread in the time that the bread is in the oven. So anything that's cooked, that's fine. So rightio, so I'm supposed to move these out to 24.5 centimetre round. I'm just going to sort of form it up by hand, and more of a rectangle than a round anyway. You want it reasonably thin once you're finished. As you can see, it's pretty thick. It's also tends to spring back a bit as well. So we'll see. That may mean that it hasn't rested enough, but too bad. You could use a rolling pin, I suppose. I can't be bothered. It's handmade after all. So once I've got it roughly to the size I want, I'm going to put it into the baking pan, where I will massage it a little bit more to the size and shape. Whoops, and thickness that I want. I've oiled this and put a bit of baking paper in the bottom as well, just in case. Probably don't need the baking paper. A little bit of oil or even flour is probably enough. Try not to get oil on the top of the bread like I am, because I don't think it's going to seal very well then. Okay, so that's about as good as that's going to get, I think. So I'm going to squirt a little bit of tomato paste on. Again, don't go right to the edge because you want to seal this. Or you can if you like, it'll just, it won't be completely sealed. Although the cheese will tend to glue it together when it melts. Because it will actually melt into the bread to a certain extent. It's not going to be like a pizza, where the cheese stays there and is all stringy. So we'll spread that on. And I think I can be very generous. Last time I made this, I thought I was too generous with the filling, but I could have put lots more in. So this time I'll probably overfill it. But too much meat is never enough. I am a carnivore by nature. So that is that. With the cheese going on. Nice big handful of shredded cheese. I'm just using a 4 cheese Italian mix. Whatever
cheese you like. Will be good. So that there, spread it to the edges a bit. Bit more, let's have it cheesy. Rightio. Now, I'm going to shake this one out so that it will cover it. Long, almost long enough, and wide. Long again. And let's see, not quite. Needs to be wider because it's got to go over the top. Tearing a little bit there. Okay, let's see, that's good on the ends. So pinch the edges together, stretch it out, pinch it down. Maybe this side a bit short. So stretching and pinching together. Likewise there. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Don't think it'll matter too much. I'm just going to sort of push it down a little bit. Now that has to prove for 30 minutes. I'm going to cover it in my plastic. A little bit of oil so it doesn't stick. Also, I hope it doesn't stick. There we go, same thing, warm, draft-free place. I had my oven on for a while, it was too hot though, so I might just sit it on top of the oven for that 30 minutes. See you in a bit. Okay, so it's time to unwrap. I'll see if I can do this one-handed because I've taken the tripod away. It's more or less doubled. I mean, it's a bit soft and squidgy, so it's not going to puff up, but it has certainly expanded. So, we will now see what happens. Into the oven for, I think, 45 minutes. Okay, and there it is. That's a fair slab of focaccia. And there it is from the end, and I've had a little bit, and my God, it tastes absolutely amazing. There you go.